Now, we've kind of covered this in the past, but there's a few things that I want to expressly cover here. And this is how to avoid modifying a rig and then finding out that it doesn't work, that the modification distorts as you work. So here's a quick, simple, and very common thing that tends to happen. Let's say we have this character here and we want them to be a vampire. We want to add some fangs to these characters. Very simple modification. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select my rig. I'm going to make sure that the body resolution is set to high because I want to make sure I modify the nice high resolution in here. And then I'm going to make sure that I can actually select the body on this rig. So select body selectable, turn that on. From there, I'm going to need to turn on the facial controls. And then all I need to do is select the teeth within the mouth here. And I'm just going to drag them out here so we can see them a little bit better. It's just easier to modify teeth when they're visible, you're not having to spin around the head and all of that stuff. So with all of this, now we're going to modify the teeth. Pretty simple. To create fangs, the easiest way to do this is select the vertices on one of the teeth here. And then what you can do is hit soft select, which is the B key on the keyboard. And you'll notice that the colors change right here. Now, when you first do this, let me reset the settings here. This is what you're going to get. So normally if I change one vertex, you can see I'm just moving that one little point. Everything else stays still. If I hit B, now I've turned on soft select, which if I hold down the B key and then middle mouse drag, I can select a range of vertices based on my selection. And then from there, move all of that. Well, this isn't super helpful, is it? I'm trying to get a fang here, and instead I'm just punching in the whole teeth, all the teeth together. That's not going to be really great. Potato chip, I just read your comment there. So that's not going to be too great right there. So what we need to do is change how soft select works. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to tool settings. If you don't see it on the left side there, it's the little hammer icon in the very top right here. And under the soft selection menu right there, I'm going to switch the fall off mode from volume, which calculates the entire volume, all the vertices as a whole. And I'm going to switch this to surface. So now it's only going to calculate the vertices based on how they are connected to those around them. And since in this case, all the teeth are actually separate pieces, it's not going to go across the gap here. So now I can set my range like this. So again, hold down B, middle mouse drag, and then just pull down, fang. Done. Let's do that on the other side. I could have done them both together as well. So we'll just do that. Done. There we go. We've got fangs. Quick and easy. Done. Yay. Wow, that was a quick demo. Except, if we start moving things, we might run into some issues. So, if I rotate the head here, for example, you'll notice that the teeth start to sink in right there. See that? Let me actually move the bottom teeth so it's a little easier to see. Zip, like that. Now, watch the teeth here as I rotate the head. See how you can see the angle changing as it goes up across there? And at this point, the teeth have just been knocked back in like that. Why? Why is it doing this? Why are they breaking and twisting as we're moving the head? Well, in the case of this rig, the reason that this is happening is because these teeth are rigged. They are not just simple pieces of geometry. I've got these extra controls here that I can use to bend and twist all of the teeth together, like so. And because everything's rigged, when we make this change on top of that rigged geometry, those changes are going to kind of twist and morph as the rig is moving. If these teeth were just simple geometry that's just like in the mouth and we can just move it but not bend it, it would be fine. So how do we get around this? How do we get to change these teeth without all of this morphing and having to do a complex setup of some sort? Well, there's two main ways, and then a third kind of deep dive way, which is both simple and complex depending on the rig. So let's go over the basic way of doing this. So essentially the basic way, and is not my favorite way, is that we need to break the connection in these teeth. Essentially turn them into simple geometry that we can constrain back to the mouth, or in this case, the gums and the tooth controller. What this is going to allow us to do is avoid any of that rigged history and just have a simple geometry we can move. So I'm going to do this super quick. I don't recommend this way typically. So I'm going to take these teeth here, duplicate them, and then just move them up right there. And I'm going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, like so. Now, if we move this tooth controller, let's double check, you can see it's not attached in any way. It is just simple geometry. What this means is I can now modify these teeth. So once again, I can just select those fangs, there and there, whip, move them down, like so. And now I need to reconstrain them to the rest of the mouth. So I would hide the regular teeth, bring these back down, and constrain them. But you'll notice that this is one whole set of teeth. I'd need to separate them first. So now we have to go through more steps. First, we need to select all the different teeth. So I'm going to select all of them here. I'm going to have to go to Mesh, Separate, to separate each tooth individually. And then I'm going to have to go back in and select all the top teeth. Once again, go to Mesh, Combine, and combine them back into one piece. Do the same for the lower teeth. So combine those. Once again, I'll delete the history. Whenever you separate and combine things, it's good to delete the history to avoid any issues. And then from there, I can set these back into place right here. And oops, I moved them to the side. Don't want to do that. There we go. I'm not going to worry too much about exact positioning here. And then from there, I can constrain them to the mouth controls right here. So again, I'm doing this quickly because I don't recommend doing this method for most modifications. So like that. Now everything moves. Great. It moves with the teeth and the gums. If I move the head, everything works. No distortion. Perfect. But I did this now. If I actually want to morph the teeth, which is such a cool feature on a rig, I've lost it completely. Now the teeth are literally just solid piece of geometry, and I've lost all of this interconnectivity that was so nice to have. Not great. So, like I said, not my favorite way of doing this. On certain rigs, having to like break that history and then kind of reattach it is kind of your only option sometimes. It's very rare, but sometimes that happens. In that case, fine, we can do it. But I would much rather do this in a way that allows me to keep that construction history and keep that ability to really play around with this rig. So, what's the other way we can do this? The other way, and this is my favorite way, is blend shapes in Maya. We've talked about blend shapes before on this stream here. And essentially blend shapes are ways of modifying geometry that is undoable, which is awesome. It's animatable, which is even more awesome. And it kind of appends itself to the end of a hierarchy of operations. So for example, rigging has all of these deformers and whatnot. If you add a blend shape to the end of it, you can actually keep all that history and it doesn't break anything. And Celix, thank you so much for the sub. Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thanks for the reminder. I've got a new bottle this time, a little bit bigger. So, yay. So, thank you for the reminder. So, blend shapes. How do we use them? Well, First, let's get to the blend shape menu. To do that, you go to Windows, Animation, Shape Editor right here. So the shape editor is where you control the blend shapes for all of the rig. And you'll notice that when I open this rig already has a ton of blend shapes. Blend shapes are used with rigging to help fix deformation. So when a rig, for example, bends its elbow here, a lot of rigs, if you just kind of do a base rig, that pinch right here in the arm is not going to work correctly. It's going to bend and it's going to twist and it's going to intersect geometry and it's going to get a weird, like just loopy bend, kind of like olive oil from Popeye, just a rubber hose. So to get that proper pinch in there with the muscle and the skin, you would use a blend shape that as you bend the arm, as that controller rotates, the geometry morphs to create that pinch. So blend shapes are used in rigs all the time to help make shapes more defined. Now you won't see exactly, it's a corrective shape. Now you're not going to see this in every rig. For example, game rigs very rarely, if ever, have blend shapes because those don't translate too well into game engines typically. There's new technology that's kind of coming in and like merging the two together, which is really cool. But right now, blend shapes are typically reserved for film and TV rigs. Now, we've got a lot of blend shapes in here. Do we have to worry about all of these? No. What we're going to do is we're going to create our own blend shape. So to create a blend shape, all you need to do is go here, hit the Create Blend Shape button. Boop. There we go. Now at the very bottom here, you'll want to make sure your object is selected first. So you'll notice that nothing came up. So select your object first, then hit Create Blend Shape. Boop. Right there, we get a new blend shape. I could rename this if I want. So let's call this Fang Shaper. Right there. And then from there, we need to add the target, the geometry that's going to be edited. So we're going to add a target here. Boop. Right there. Now, you see here, those are the eye, anim, teeth geometry. Right there. With this, and you'll notice that it's in edit mode. You can even see it here, editing blend shape, eye, teeth, geo, right there. I can now edit these teeth. So we'll do the same thing. Exact same thing as before. Select the vertices, select that. Once again, go into our fall off, set that to surface so that we're not dealing with any weird morphing. I can select the teeth right there. Boop. Right there. Now, we've got those fangs. And within the shape editor, I have the power to turn this on and off. So I can actually scrub through the intensity of the change I just made and have the teeth maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer. Or better yet, I could actually animate this attribute. I could connect this attribute into my channel box here and have a fang, like a fang attribute that lets me grow the fang. So you could have your character actually like go, and the teeth actually grow in the scene. And that would be a cool little moment. You can actually animate this change. Very nice. So already it's way more powerful than just moving vertices. But even better, let's turn off edit mode. We don't need to edit this anymore. What's even better, and I'll move the bottom teeth here just so we can see it, is that when I move the head, those teeth don't distort. You can see that? They stay straight because we're not editing just the vertices at a base level. We're adding another element over top of everything that's going, okay, now that all of this rigging is done, now change the teeth. So it's all hierarchy based. That's really what all of this comes down to, is at what point are we making the change in all of this hierarchy of rigging and controls and whatnot. So we've got that. Even better yet, if I move the gum control here, those teeth still move with. Yes. So we get the best of all worlds here. There's only one negative with blend shapes. And it is that if you move a control too much, you're going to start seeing some deformation. So, and this depends on the rig, but you'll see this in most rigs. So if I move this gum control too far, look at that. See how the teeth suddenly implode? This is because The blend shape, just the way the history of it all works, it's trying to apply this change after all of the rigging and is causing some miscalculations essentially in where the geometry should move. So with something like this, you're just going to want to be very careful that you don't push certain controls too far. On teeth, you're probably never going to run into an issue like that. But if it's something on the face, you can run into potential issues here. So what do we do in this case? Well, it really depends on the rig. If the rig is built in a kind of finalized way, that's all you can do. You just have to hope for the best and you make some correctives, or you might have like one fang shaper for when the teeth are normal, another one for when the teeth are like stretched and posed out a certain way, and then you'll blend between the two. So you're gonna have different things you can do there. It's kind of complicated, but it's still possible. For this rig, the Aya rig, and this goes for most of the AM rigs, they are built in a way that it's made to modify. Now, for many of you in AM, you'll probably go, what? I never knew this. The reason it's kind of not talked about too much is because if you don't know what you're doing, you can easily break the rig. So you have to be careful with it. And honestly, getting good animation is the priority, not modifying rigs. That's kind of the goal. You shouldn't be spending time fighting rigs. The moment you fight a rig, you're wasting so much time in learning. But after, maybe you just want to modify your rig and create some interesting changes to it. What you can do is if you open up the outliner here for the Aya rig, for example, let's open up the outliner here. So you've got the rig, here's the geometry right there. And if we open this up, let's look at the normal geometry there. You'll notice that there's our anim geometry. Okay, cool. And then we've got a few others. Well, these other piece of geometry here, if you switch, for example, to your render geometry, you'll see, it's switching to a different render version of this rig, which is a high-res version of the rig. It's actually a totally different set of geometry in there. So if I switch this back to anim, we go back here. Now, why this is important is there is a base geometry in here and it's hidden. You can't see it normally. But if I turn on the visibility here and move it to the side, this base geometry is what everything on Aya is based off of. If I make any modifications to this base geometry, it is the base level. All the rigging changes get applied to this. So, what does that mean? Well, now if I take my teeth, we'll move those out once again. And I didn't move the gums this time. We'll take our teeth and we'll add a blend shape to this. So, once again, Windows, Animation Editors, Shape Editor. Go in here. I undid my previous shape, so it's not there anymore. We'll select these teeth, create a blend shape, add a target, and we'll modify this. Now, as I'm doing this, watch the teeth in the back here. So, we'll select those vertices right here. Okay. Make sure our soft selection is set to volume, or sorry, to surface. Stretch those and look at the teeth way in the distance there. They are growing as well. So you can see that I'm adjusting the base model and it's adjusting the model after it, the normal and then the render model as well. Everything is based on this, which means I can tweak this here, make all of my changes I want. So let's say that's what we want there. And now on my finalized rig, we've got those teeth. If I move the head back, there's no distortion whatsoever. And not only that, let's move this so we can see this a little bit more clearly. If I modify the deformation here, look at that. It stays whole up until the point where everything breaks. Like I've twisted this to the point where regardless of how I did this, it would break. But those teeth aren't deforming. So with this, we can do any change we want and have it apply throughout the rig. So if I want to adjust the shape of the nose, if I want to adjust the shape of the face a little bit, maybe make the sides a little bit flatter versus the round shape we have right now, things like that, I can do that on the base model, and it's just going to apply and propagate to every other version of the rig and be rigged in there, which is really awesome. So that is the basics of modifying the rigs. Now, like I was saying, this base level method is not available on most rigs that I know of. Very few rigs do it this way because honestly, when you have a rig, usually that's the final version. You're not going to be editing a base version later. But because these rigs are meant to be flexible, meant to be kind of edited and modified, you do have that capability in there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The biggest thing is whether, regardless of what you're doing and regardless of what rig you're using, blend shapes are typically the best way to go about it. Now, there's a question here. Is it true that blend shapes can only move in one axis? Blend shapes should move in multiple axes. So for example, if I select these teeth here and let's select all of this here. Doot and doot. Let's go back, make sure I've got this in edit mode. Good. I should be able to also move these forward like so. Now, if I move them side to side, they're just going to wiggle back and forth. So we'll just go forward like this. And you can see it goes forward there. And then if I play the blend shape on and off, it just morphs back into that shape right there. So it can go across multiple axes. You can rotate them. Honestly, it'll just take whatever change you do and slide it through. Now, the thing with blend shapes that you will have is that it's going to be a linear motion. So it's not like I can have these teeth bend and like curve in and out of a specific like path. It's just going to be from beginning position to end position and just going to slide back and forth between those two. If I wanted to actually have like these teeth grow and maybe they're going to turn into like curled fangs or something, like an Oni demon or something like that, or like a boar, like a big boar tusks with a curve in there, I would have to do this a whole different way. And I wouldn't do this with blend shapes. I would actually make a new piece of geometry that I could animate the transition between along a path. So hopefully that answers the question there. So yeah, that's the first demo there. That was actually pretty quick for, at least for me. On my standards, that was a pretty quick demo. So I'm proud of myself there. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this gives all of you some ideas on maybe trying to modify some rigs. I usually recommend not going too far with it, honestly. Usually it's just small things like adding fangs. What I love to do is, for most rigs, just offsetting the teeth. Because a lot of rigs come in and their teeth are very even, very flat. And that's kind of normal. It's kind of a generic teeth shape. But it's not interesting to look at. So I like to try and give the characters just a little bit more variation, maybe slightly longer fangs, maybe buck teeth, maybe just some like slightly offset teeth. It just makes the character more interesting to look at, even if it's just slight modifications.